Welcome everyone to our webinar with Meredith Hassett and our Corvid by Wix. I'm very excited about bringing this webinar to the Top Coder community to introduce Corvid by Wix to everyone. And Corvid by Wix team is very interested in the Top Coder community, Top Coder developers, and especially JavaScript developers because of the great framework that Meredith is going to showcase here today. I'm looking forward to doing even more webinars like this, so please do let us know in our post-webinar survey your thoughts. And of course, please go check out Corvid by Wix over on wix.com. and see their platform, check out their brand, and of course, check out all the great things that Meredith is going to talk about today. I think, Meredith, that's pretty much it. If you want to get started, thank you again for joining us today and sharing everything that you guys are doing over at Wix with Corvid.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited to show you guys what we have here in store today. I'm going to spend a few minutes just kind of introducing the product because I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with it at all. And then we're going to dive in and actually start building an application. We're going to build a Kickstarter style site so we can show you how easy it is to get a funding site up and running really rapidly. The idea with Corvid is it's all about developer velocity. And when it comes to building sites, you don't want to be spending a lot of time focusing on hosting and setup. So we really want to enable you to develop faster. And we wanted to open up Corvid so you could actually do full stack development on top of your Wix site. Because if you've worked with Wix before, it's a drag and drop UI editor. So you're really only building on the UI. But when you open up Corvid, you open up the whole world of your website and you can focus on getting the logic and the business value into the application and not have to worry about all the other stuff of web development like hosting and maintenance and database connections and stuff like that. So we're here to try to make your life as a developer easier so you can develop faster and start getting more clients and bookings for yourself. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and just introduce myself also a little bit too, because I may be new to this audience as well. My name is Meredith Hassett. I am a front-end developer by trade. So I definitely more prefer working with the UI just because I like being able to see what I do. But it doesn't mean I don't value the backend. I think it's really important. I just prefer it to be handled by other people. So I love building integrations. I just recently built an integration with Twilio, which we're going to look at here today as well, because Twilio is one of my favorite tools to integrate with. And I also wrote a blog about that. So if you're interested in getting all of the step-by-step guides on how to build that integration, follow me on Twitter because that's where I will share those guides with you. We also have things like Stripe and SendGrid coming out for you really soon too. So if you want to keep up to date with all of these integrations that are available from Corvid, because you can pretty much do anything with Corvid, and I'll show you why that works a little bit later, then keep an eye on what I have to say. And then last but not least, I'm a developer advocate for Corvid by Wix. So I just get to do stuff like this with you guys, and I love doing it. And I'm based in the San Francisco Bay Area, if anyone else is local. So it's a little early for me, but I'm really excited to be here with you guys. As I mentioned, we're going to be building a Kickstarter site. So I want to show you how easy it is to pass data from page to page. We're going to build a third-party integration. We're going to connect to a database and do database saves, and we're going to have some event handlers on our database as well. We can also take a look, time permitting, at how to create some HTTP functions. So if you need to expose any sort of site functionality from your site, I want to show you guys how easy it is to incorporate all of these components into your website in just the hour that we have here today. To work with Corvid, if you've seen the Wix editor before, there is a menu bar at the very top of your screen. In that menu bar, there is an option to turn dev mode on. It is not enabled by default, so you just have to go ahead and turn it on for your sites. This is because, as you'll see, we're going to get a pre-designed site. So maybe if you're working with designers on your team, then your designers are going to build the site on the Wix editor. And then when you get the site to actually add that complex business functionality and business logic, you can turn on dev mode and get access to the site structure and the IDE. A little bit more about Corvid as well. Corvid is a JavaScript web development platform, meaning that you don't have to learn anything new if you've already learned JavaScript. We wanted it to be really simple to get started. So you can think of learning Corvid as learning a new API documentation. We have some APIs that we expose for you so you can work with the UI components and work with different elements in Corvid. And we wanted to make this as simple as possible to get started. So it is totally based on JavaScript. with everything that you know and love about that platform. You have a built-in IDE, which is for code maintenance purposes, really simplifying your experience. You don't have to do any IDE or pipeline setups. You can use the IDE, and the code for the UI is attached exactly to the page that you are working with. And we're going to see a little bit more of this in a minute. You have those integrated databases now, so no more setting up external databases and having to create authentication pipelines and connections. We're going to help you work with databases really simply, and we've already got pre-built APIs for you to work with our databases as well. It is running on top of a serverless Node.js instance, so you get access to all of your favorite portions of Node.js without having to do any of the setup and maintenance yourself. And as I mentioned, it is a zero setup environment. So you just log in to Wix.com, sign up for a free account, and you can get production grade Corvid applications just by publishing instantaneously. And again, I'm going to show you guys how easy that is too. Because again, we're all about dev velocity with Corvid. We want to make everything easier for you so you can start helping more clients faster and getting more business for yourself without adding additional headache and overhead costs to your platform. We're able to accomplish all of this with Corvid with that built-in cloud IDE. So all of your code is going to be in the cloud, and it is going to be attached to the websites and pages that you are building. So minimizing your code maintenance and minimizing your code headaches. It's again running on top of a Node.js server, which means you also get access to all of your favorite NPM packages. So we're going to be using the Twilio NPM module today to show you guys how easy it is to incorporate and work with that. We also do all of the package.json handling for you, so you don't have to, again, worry about package maintenance here. We're trying to reduce your maintenance costs, reduce your hosting support that you have to do, and help you get developing a lot faster. You can also start exposing HTTP functions on your site. So I'll show you how you can query the database and expose that data via an HTTP function. It's super simple. We're just going to look at a get, but you can do any verb that you're interested in. And there's great documentation on how to work with building HTTP functions on our site. We also have a bunch of front-end APIs. Because Corvid is going to be a little bit black boxy, you're going to see we expose certain functionality for our UI elements via these APIs because we handle a lot of the test cases for you. So when you work with Wix UI elements, you get browser compatibility, you get responsiveness, you get accessibility, you get translation handling, and we don't want you to accidentally break all of that. So we do kind of lock it down and just expose events and properties for UI elements. But this is also, you don't have to do as much testing, and it still works and is responsive on all screen sizes and all browsers. You can get access to external databases. You can also get access to advanced marketing tools. And last but not least is dynamic pages. So you can actually start creating a data-driven site. I'm not going to spend too much time on these last ones, but we do have a bunch of other webinars that are on our YouTube channel if you're interested in seeing what you can do with dynamic pages and external databases, if those are some features that interest you. There's a couple key new terms that you're going to see when working with Corvid. So I just want to introduce them before I go ahead and start coding with them. One of them is going to be $W. You can think of this as replacing your get element by ID or your jQuery integration. This enables you to access and manipulate the UI elements on the screen. So on here, you can see I have $W hashtag text input ID. And so this is how I actually go and get that element by its ID and start working with it. So whether it's retrieving values, attaching event listeners to different elements on the page, or accessing different properties, $W is how you're going to start accessing your UI elements on your front end pages. This is going to be really crucial for getting and setting values, which we're going to be using a lot today because we're going to be building a Kickstarter site where we need to retrieve the amount of money that you want to pledge, as well as we're going to build a Twilio integration. So we also need to retrieve your phone number too. So using $W against these UI elements is going to be really helpful for getting and setting values. The other thing that is really going to be unique to Corvid is our list of Wix APIs. Since Wix is a web development platform, you don't get all of these APIs out of the box. You just have to import them because the more APIs that you carry on your UI, the slower your page is going to be, which is just not good for SEO purposes. and user experience. We don't want to have a slow site. So anytime you want to work with a Wix API, you just have to import it on that page or in the backend code. And it's really simple to get started working with them. It does autocomplete. So the IDE that we have built in will start autocompleting for the different properties and methods attached to these APIs. But you do have to import them again, but this is for your benefit. So you are SEO friendly, you are speedy, and you are not creating a really slow user experience for your end users. To work with APIs, you just have to, after you import it, you can then use the dot notation to access any of the available methods or properties for those APIs. So in this case, we can use the Wix window API to actually open and close lightboxes, as well as access lightbox properties. We'll also look at Wix location, which is helpful for navigating your sites if you need to build in some custom navigation and routing here. And you don't need to know Java to understand this stuff. This is all going to be JavaScript based. So if you have any experience doing JavaScript development, I should say, you're going to be able to, it's going to look really familiar when I actually start coding. Java is not going to be the basis of this. It's going to be JavaScript. If you want to check out all of the APIs that are available, we do have an API reference guide, which I have linked here. So it's just wix.com/corvid/new reference because they just updated the reference guides. And then we're also going to be working with Twilio. I'm just going to be focusing on a simple create and send message. But if you're interested in more that you can do with Twilio, because they obviously have more than just sending SMS, go ahead and take a look at the Twilio documentation here as well. So see, there's a question about Python-based APIs. It is not, there's no Python-based APIs. Again, this is an entirely JavaScript-based environment. And with that, I want to show you guys what this looks like because I didn't want to spend too much time on slides. I just wanted to introduce some key concepts before we actually get started. So I'm going to switch over to my editor. So on my editor here, this is what a standard Wix editor looks like. So you're able to add or like control the menus and pages, add different UI elements on the screen. And it's not just elements like text and images. We can also add things like anchor links as well. So for example, this is a Kickstarter style site. If we want to be able to back this project, instead of it maybe going to a new page, we want it to jump down to the section where you can choose your rewards. So what we can do is we can add an anchor tag right here on the page. We can rename it, so we'll give it a meaningful name. So let's go ahead and call this rewards. And then we can also attach buttons to navigating to different anchor links on the page, as well as a bunch of other functionality. So if I just change where this is linked to, so instead of going to a new page, let's have it linked to an anchor tag, and we'll choose the rewards anchor tag. So there's a lot of functionality that you even have in the Wix GUI, but when you want to do things beyond just kind of that standard functionality that comes from Wix, this is where Corvid is going to be really helpful. So one of those main things is going to be the pledge value. So when we're pledging our amount, we need to actually enter the value that we want to pledge, and then when we click continue, we want to navigate to a new page. This is not out of the box Wix functionality. You can't grab values from an input field and pass them along. Additionally, you can't have custom forms with standard Wix functionality. So this is where Corvid starts getting really helpful and enables us to actually incorporate this functionality to our site. So I'm going to go to dev mode here in the top menu bar. I'm going to go ahead and turn it on. And I'm going to see that my IDE changes a little bit here because I'm now going to get access to my entire site structure. So not only do I have access to my UI pages and lightboxes, I also have access to any public functionality as well as backend functionality here too, my node modules, and any databases I want to create and attach to my site. So this is really going to be helpful for getting access to your entire full stack application. And you're going to go from just a UI Wix site to a full stack Corvid app. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to go ahead and retrieve that pledge amount, because that's going to be important for passing along to our next page. So we can look at the different UI elements on the screen, and when we click them, we're able to look at this properties pane here, and it's able to give us some basic information about this UI element. So I have these elements grouped so that if I ever move them, they go together, just because I want it to look nice on the UI. And maybe that's how my designer passed it along to me, because she wants those things to also stick together. And then me as a developer, I can go ahead and look at the different elements in that group, and I'm seeing I have an input field here. Let's give it a more meaningful name than input 1, because we do have auto completion in our IDE, and we want to make sure that we're giving it meaningful names so we can actually keep track of what we're working with, and it makes our code really readable. So if we go ahead and name this pledge input, and I can also enable it or disable it by default, have it hidden. So again, we're going to take a look at how we can show hide things too. So if you need anything based off of data points in the database, user interactions on the screen to behave differently, you can use Corvid to add that dynamic capability to your site. So for pledge amount, if I want to retrieve that value, we're going to use the $W notation to retrieve it. So maybe I'm going to define a new variable here. And I want to get this from my $W and my pledge amount input here. So as you can see, I started typing, it's going to autocomplete and suggest things for me. So this is why those meaningful IDs are going to be really helpful here, because it makes it a lot easier to determine what I want to actually work with when I'm writing in my code, and it also makes my code really readable. I can then also see what properties and methods are available against this UI element. So in this case, I want to grab the value that the user inputted. So I'm going to just go to .value, and that's going to return the entered information in that field. However, this is only going to update when the page loads, and a user might be able to type. And as they're typing, I want to actually get the information that they're entering there. So as you can see here in the properties pane with input fields, we actually do have an onChange function where we can update the pledge value as the user is entering a new value. So I'm going to actually wrap this in an onChange event for the pledge input. So I'm going to go ahead to pledge onChange, and then I'm going to add an event handler here. Way too many parentheses. And this event handler is actually going to update this value. So I'm going to just need to define it outside of the event. So as the user starts typing in new values for pledge amount, I should get the updated value as that onChange event fires. The next thing that I'm going to need to do is I want this button to actually fire a navigation to the next page where the user fills in their payment details and provides me their information about how I can contact them about backing my project. So I'm going to go ahead and update this button's name. Let's go ahead and name it Pledge Button. And I'm also going to want to attach an event to this one as well. So we can have an onClick function here. What I'm going to do then is I'm going to add a new pledge button onClick event listener. And in this onClick event, I want to actually navigate to a new page. So to navigate to a new page and pass values when doing it, I'm going to need to use the Wix location API. So I'm going to need to import that. So at the top of my code, I'm going to go ahead and start importing. I have a nice auto-completed list here. I can't spell to save my life, so I'm just going to go ahead and search for Wix location in this list. And once I find it, hit enter. And now I have imported the Wix location API into my application, so I can start working with it. To start seeing what I can do with Wix location, I'm going to start auto-typing, and I can use that autocomplete. I can look at different functions and parameters available. So Wix location gives us access to our site's URL and enables us to navigate to different pages within our site. So if I need different properties of my URL, like what is my base URL name, what path am I on. I'm able to get a lot of those properties using Wix location. I'm going to use the to method because that's how we can navigate to a different page on our site. And then I'm going to navigate to the fill in your details page. But I also do want to pass a query parameter in my URL, so I'm able to get access to that pledge value. So I'm going to just go ahead and define a new query parameter called pledge, and I'm going to attach the pledge value to that URL parameter. And so now when I navigate to my next page, I should see in my URL that I have pledge equals pledge value that was entered. Cool. So now on my next page, I actually have to retrieve that value. So I'm going to go to the fill in your details page. And then I'm going to need to retrieve that value. To retrieve that value, again, I'm going to need access to the URL. So I'm going to need to import Wix location. And then from here, I can go ahead and find the pledge value from the Wix location.query. So that's going to be the query string that it's going to find in our URL. And I want to grab the pledge value that is in our URL. To test that this works, oopsies, I'm going to go ahead and console log this just so we can see that it is passing our pledge value. So I'm going to go back to my home page because we're going to test the user's flow. If I want to do testing with Corvid, I go to this preview button and it's going to open our QA version of our site. I can then go to I can make sure my anchor tag link works. So it's working really nicely. I can pledge without a reward. And let's go ahead and pledge $25. I'm going to make sure you can see my developer console as well. And when I hit continue, I see 25 logged in there. So we are passing that parameter from our home page to our details page. With that, I'm going to go ahead and go back to the editor because now we actually need to use that value to update our reward input instead of this hard-coded 10. So if I want to update a value on a page, previously we have now gotten values. Now we want to set values for our elements. So I'm going to go ahead to this group, make sure that our pledge property has a nice name to work with. And then I'm going to $W, if I can type. And then I'm going to set the value here, just like I retrieved the value. So depending on what side of the equal sign you're assigning the value is going to be determined if it's a getter or setter. So we're going to go ahead and set the value to pledge value. And just to verify that this works, we can go back to our preview page. And the memory is still intact, so we've got 25 and we're seeing 25 here. If I was to go back to the home page, enter a new value of 50, for example, and continue on, I'm able to see that total amount update here as well. So this way we're able to get values and then set them on new pages by passing by URL parameters. There's other ways to pass data between pages. You can sort it in the database and then access the database on the next page. You can use Wix storage, which gives you access to the browser memory and cookies, as well as site memory. So there are a couple of different ways to pass values between pages. Since we're just having a simple number value here, it's really easy just to pass it as a URL parameter and then access that URL parameter. So I just went this method, but again, there's a bunch of ways that you can pass data depending on how complicated it is for those pages shown. And I see that there's a question about, is the value shown in the URL? It is shown in the URL. So if I was to publish my page and take a look at it, for example, we can't see it because the, as you can see, like here in the QA, this is a really long URL and it's kind of hard to see. So if I go to view site and we take a look at this, so we'll go ahead and pledge maybe $30, so it's a new number. Go ahead to continue. You can actually see it as being passed as a URL parameter up there in the URL. I see there's also a question about coding in an external IDE. So we do have an alpha version of coding in an external IDE. Let's see, I'm going to answer this live, so it's timed in there. So there's a question about using an external IDE. You can use the alpha version that we have of working with your own editor. Again, it is an alpha, so there are a decent amount of bugs with it. They are working on getting it to a live, generally available version of it. But right now, it is going to be just an alpha version of working with an external IDE. But if you do prefer that, there are tools for you there. Okay, and then there's another question here about using the local IDE, which we just answered. And then how do SEO on page things on HTML tags? So SEO is going to be already built into your site. So if I go back to my site, you're able to control different SEO elements by looking at your page settings. So if I go to my settings on my page, there is a whole SEO tab here on how Google is seeing your site, how it's crawling your site, what information it's getting about it, how you want it to look, what are going to be some of the descriptions, which this is going to be really important to update because this is how Google finds your keywords for your site. So from an SEO perspective, everything is optimized to try to be SEO friendly. When you go ahead and add different UI elements such as text, we do have it tagged as like H1, H2, H3. So you want to make sure that you're using a really good combination of these different heading tags to make sure that Google is going to be able to crawl your site really nicely. I am not an SEO expert, so I can't go too in detail about SEO on this, but I do know that we are SEO friendly and we do enable you to use different things like H1 tags, which are going to be really crucial when Google's crawling your site to make sure that it finds those keywords that you really want associated with your site. Cool. So charts in Google Maps, I see there's a question about that as well. So we're able to incorporate, you can use a Google Maps API to add Google Maps to your site. There is also, I believe, an integrated version of that as well. Let me see. I don't remember where it is off the top of my head, but I believe there is built-in maps as well. They change where things are sometimes too. So there's a bunch of different UI elements that you can add to the screen. You can also, if you're a premium user, create custom UI elements too. So on the Corvid documentation, there is an example of incorporating the external chart.js library. So if you want to create custom chart elements, you need to have a premium site with Wix, but you are able to do so as well with that. And I do believe we have some maps pre-built in here. I just don't remember where it is off the top of my head because it's a little early. But yeah, feel free to like look around at different components that are available in the site because there's a lot of things here and it's constantly being updated as well. So like I already forget where maps is because it's probably added some new stuff too. But I swear I've seen it in here before. I'm just blanking. Contact. Okay, there it is. Thank you. Yeah, so you have pre-built Google Maps in here as well. Or if you need a more, again, if you need a more complex integration, Google Maps also does have APIs, and we're going to take a look at how to work with NPM modules in a second. So you'll be able to see how to work with external APIs as well if you need something beyond Google Maps, because they do kind of lock things down now. So if you wanted to use a different charting service or mapping service, you can definitely do that as well. Cool. Thank you guys for helping me out in the chat. All right. So now that we've passed values from pages to another page, we've set values here on the UI. The other thing I want to take a quick look at is how do we actually create and write data to a database? Because in this case, we're going to be retrieving users' name and phone number to send them a text message, but maybe we also want to schedule a job, because you can also create job schedulers. So if I was to go to my backend and then go to plus here, you can create a job scheduler. And so maybe everyone who's pledged to my product, if once I have a product update, I want to send them a new text message, a new email, whatever your preferred form of contact is, we're going to need actually that list of everyone who's pledged to our project. So the easiest way to do this is going to be to attach it to a database. So I'm going to just add a new database collection here. And I'm going to go ahead and name it pledges. I can go ahead and control the content permissions here as well. So if it's site content, it's going to be read only for anybody visiting my site. If it's form submission, it's going to be write only for anyone visiting my site. You can also set higher level permissions too, where if you want it to be members only content, you can control if it's only members who can access this portion of your site and write or read data to it as well. If it needs to be admin level data, and then also we have custom use. So if the out of the box permissions don't work for you and you need more granular control over read, write, update, and delete, custom use enables you to do that as well. So I'm just going to go with form submission, and I'm going to go ahead and create collection. So you get a field here, which is going to be your primary field. I'm going to just rename it to user's name, just so I know from a visual perspective what it's actually referring to, but it's still going to be accessed using the .title property. I can also add additional fields. So I'm going to also add a phone number field. I'm going to leave it as text, just so that users can enter any format they want, whether it has like plus country code, parentheses and dashes and stuff like that. But if you prefer to have it as just like a string of numbers, you can go ahead and set it to numbers, and this will automatically start adding some data validation for you against your site. Oops. And then the last thing that I'm going to save is their pledge value. Pledge value, which I'm going to set as a number because this should be a dollar amount. So I do want to enforce the data validation that we're entering numbers and someone isn't trying to pledge like ABC to my site, because that's not going to be very helpful. I see some comments about hoping that this is recorded. I believe Adam is recording for us, so you guys should all have access to the recording afterwards. With this, my database is going to be created, so I can go ahead and start working with my database on my page. To work with databases on a UI, it's really simple. You can do it via total GUI or you can do it via code. I'm going to go ahead and go to Content Manager. I'm going to go to Add Content Elements, and I can go ahead and add a Forms data set. So this enables me to collect user entries on my page. And I can configure it, again, totally via GUI here. I'm going to connect it to the pledges database. As you can see, this is form collection, so it's write only. So we have another layer of permissioning and read-write access to at this level. And since we're writing, filters and sorting don't apply here. And then the last thing that I want to do is I want to attach it to my pay button. So I can go ahead and connect it to the submit action for this data set. Now, to actually enter fields into the values that I want to send to the database, you can use this to connect to data. But if you want to do some custom formatting on the data, such as I want to make sure that my pledge amount is an actual number, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use some data set methods. So if I look at my data set, I have an on before save, which when a save event is triggered, this will execute before the save event is actually fired. So I can go ahead and create a new event, where I listen for a save event. And before I do that, I go ahead and create my data object. So in order to create my data object, I want to retrieve values because I want to make sure I get the latest inputs from the users. So I'm going to go ahead and define some new variables such as username, phone number, and pledge amount. Or let's go ahead and call it pledge number because I want this to be a number value. So this is phone number text. And I'm able to get values just like we did on the home page. So I'm going to go ahead and get the name input, and I want to retrieve the value. Phone number is going to work the same way. So we're going to go ahead and figure out how to type phone input. And then we want dot value. And then the pledge number as well, we want to go ahead and grab that from pledge amount dot value. But again, we want this to be a number, so I'm actually going to wrap it in a parse int. So you do have access to all of your JavaScript functionality here. So we're going to go ahead and parse int. Oops. That's actually going to go inside. And since we work in a base 10 world, I'm going to go ahead and give it a base 10. I think I spelled something wrong here. I did. I should not have capitalized. Nice. And so this will validate this is a number that we're passing to our database as well. So do forms support custom validation? They do. So on before save triggers before validation is fired. So if you want validation, I believe we also have on our data set dot oops. We can go ahead and set validation here as well, I believe. Okay. I'll have to double check the documentation, but you can add custom validation here as well. So these fields, you can have different settings on them about if they're required. You can set a character limit here too. Oh, and add pattern validation. Whoops, sorry, my brain is not 100% on just yet. So you can add additional custom validation via the editor, and then also check the validation during the on save events against, so you can run the validators against the input fields. So I hope that answers a couple questions around that. So data set is ID for, so when you create a database collection, it is the entire database. A data set enables you to create a subset of the database. So instead of working with the entire database on your page, you're working with a smaller object. Because again, we don't want to be loading lots and lots of data onto our page. We don't want to be having lots of data on our page again. So data sets enables you to work with a smaller subset of data and also apply additional layers of control on it. So on this page, maybe if I want to have two different data sets, one is a write data set and one is a read data set, I'm able to control how we're reading and writing data as well. And I'm only carrying around like little bits of data too. Because again, we don't want to be lugging a bunch of stuff with us, and data sets enables us to have that minimal set of data on the page that we need to make sure that the UI is valid and looks good. So data sets are just, think of them as like encapsulations of your database collection, but like smaller. All right, so when I go ahead and save here, so I've retrieved these values. So then the last thing I need to do is actually set them to my data set. So I'm able to add custom field setting here. So I'm going to go ahead and set field value. So you can either update a singular field. In this case, I want to create the whole entire object. So, and this will just go in a JSON format. So those field names are, we have like title, which is going to be our username. We have pledge amount, which is going to be that pledge number. And then we also have phone number, which is going to be that phone number text. And if you're ever wondering what these field value IDs are, you can always take a look at your database. And then look at the properties, and it's going to be just that field key, so phone number, and then pledge value. So good thing I checked because that was incorrect. So this is actually the value that I want to name the field. So I'm going to go ahead and update that to pledge value. And so that's how you find those keys when you're creating this JSON array to enter data into the database. So with that, if I go ahead and preview, I can go ahead and test this as well. So if I go ahead and enter my name, my email address, and a phone number, I can also pass in those fields as well, but I'm ignoring the validation on this. So I just want to validate that it's actually writing to the database. We can go ahead and pay. That's going to trigger that save event, and that's going to trigger our write to the database as well. Oh, I don't think I have any messaging in here too. So if we go back to our editor, take a look at our pledges database. I accidentally clicked it 3 times because I didn't have any messaging there. I didn't realize I was doing it, but you can see that we're actually writing to our database. And in here, we're looking at our sandbox version. So preview mode is attached to sandbox. And you also have a live version, which is going to be attached to your published version of your project. So you're able to have a QA and sandbox, or sorry, QA and production database as well. So you don't accidentally mix data between the two. Cool. All right, another question. So there's a question about ready-made templates. There is a bunch of templates that come from Wix. I haven't explored all of them. There is so many. So I definitely would implore you to explore all of the databases, or sorry, templates that we have on Wix.com, because there may be something that fits your need, or if it doesn't exactly fit your need, it may very closely fit your need. So I definitely would implore you to explore everything that comes from Wix. Is it possible to build for desktop only or mobile only is coming in the Q&A. So there is a way to also see if these sites are mobile friendly or desktop friendly, whether you can control if they are showing up on desktop or mobile only. I'll definitely have to explore that a little bit. So let me dig into that a little bit more and let you know. All right. So I think we've done enough on the UI, so I'm going to flip back over to the backend. So if I go ahead and take a look at my backend, I can see that I can add new web modules. You can also add just kind of standard JS files or any other file type you want. So like if you add a job scheduler, it's a .config file. So you're able to create the content that you need on the backend. I just need a JavaScript web module. So I'm going to create a new Twilio JavaScript web module that's going to go ahead and handle all of my Twilio functionality. I don't need any of this boilerplate code, so I'm going to go ahead and remove it. And then the next thing we need to do is actually install our node modules. So to add new NPM packages to your application, you just go to the node modules section, install a new package, get a sip of coffee so I stop coughing, search for Twilio, and then I'm able to see the list of everything available, and then go ahead and install it. And so this adds the Twilio NPM helper package to my application, so I could actually start working with it right away. You can also take a look at your installed list, see if they have any updates, and find the documentation as well here. So that can be really handy if you are curious on how to work with the NPM module. So I see there's a question about license details too in the chat. So everything that I'm doing right now, I'm doing in my personal Wix account, and this is entirely free. So this is going to be a totally free site. The only caveat with a free site is if I publish this site and take a look at it, with free sites, you can use it for totally productive use if you want to, but you are going to get that Wix banner here at the top. So if you don't want that Wix banner at the top, then you are going to have to get a premium site. But if you don't mind having that Wix banner, you can have this totally free site be your productive version. And we do see users doing that. It's not recommended because you also can't control the URL when you have a free site. So if you want that custom domain, you are going to need, again, a premium site. But everything we're doing here is free and totally productive and usable. All right, back to the Twilio backend. So the first thing that I need to do is go ahead and import my Twilio helper. So this is going to be case sensitive, where I'm going to grab Twilio from Twilio here, and then I'm just going to name it the Twilio to work with. I'm going to import Twilio to work with it. I then also need to stub out a function, maybe called send SMS, and this will take in a user's name and a phone number. And once I'm in here, I want to instantiate a new version of Twilio. But if I look at the Twilio NPM modules, when I want to work with the helper to validate that I'm allowed to be working with this, I do need two fields. I need my account SID and my auth token, which are going to come from your Twilio account. So if you sign up for a free Twilio account, you will be able to get that information here as well. So to do this, I'm actually going to use our secrets manager. And in our secrets manager, I can go to settings, or sorry, in our Wix site dashboard, go to settings, secrets manager. The free versions are not time limited. I see that question's in there. And then I'm going to go to store secret. So I want my Twilio auth token. And I can go ahead and save that. And then my Twilio account SID. Go ahead and save that. And so this way, I'm able to store those secrets or your API keys or passwords or anything that you don't want ever to be user readable. We can store them in our secrets manager, and then back in our IDE, if we import the Wix secrets manager, again, I can't spell to save my life, so I'm going to use the pre-fills. I also can't spell, so I can't find it. So I can import the secrets backend. And what this does is it allows me to, oops, I really can't spell, guys, get the secret based off of the name. And so this way I can retrieve those secret values. They're never stored in plain text in my code. They're never stored or visible anywhere to anyone who may be trying to maliciously attack me. So I'm able to use the secrets manager to do that. These are going to be asynchronous, and just for code cleanliness sake, I prefer the async await method. So I'm going to go ahead and define these. And this does, await does require this to be an asynchronous function, so I'm just going to go ahead and add that keyword there. And this just makes it really kind of just like clean code, because otherwise I could use promises, but it does get a little bit chainy, and that's really hard to read. So I'm going to go with async await in this case. I need this to be my account SID. So this is going to be account SID. And so these two values I'm going to need to actually do the Twilio integration. So with those values, I can go ahead and actually create a new Twilio client, which is new Twilio. And I need my account SID and my auth token. Again, if you ever need to double check if this is the right order, because it does take two, go back to the documentation. I see it's account SID and auth token, so we're good to go, and we have a new instantiated Twilio client. So with that, we can go ahead and actually start sending a message. So with our Twilio client, we're going to go to the messages endpoint, and we're going to use the create function. And the create messages function takes in 3 parameters. We have our to phone number, our from phone number, and our body. The to phone number is going to be that passed in phone number. The from is going to be our Twilio phone number. So when you sign up for a free Twilio account, you have to create an active number with Twilio. So I've already done that. So I'm going to go ahead and just plop it in here. And then oops, I missed a parenthesis here. And then the body, we just want to say a message, maybe like saying thank you for backing our, or since we have it templated here, let's go ahead and say thank you, username, for backing our product. We will send you updates. So the last thing that we need to do once our messages is actually ready to go is we want to actually call this function on the front end. Because it's exported, we can actually import it just like anything else. So if I go back to the fill in your details page, in the very top of my code to import X backend functions, I'm just going to only import the SMS function. So if you have multiple functions, again, you don't necessarily want to import them all with you. So we're just going to go ahead and import that from our backend Twilio. So here we're just following the file structure. So it's really easy to get access to your backend code on your front end. No additional setup necessary here. You have access to it. Just follow it like the file structure that you kind of see here on the side. And then we have access to the send SMS function. I'm going to actually attach this to an on-click event for this button. So I can use the properties pane to rapidly add events to my elements as well. So I just clicked that plus, I hit enter, and now I get a code stub for payment click. And when the button is clicked, we can also send an SMS to our phone number. Oops, it's name and phone number, which we're actually going to need to, again, retrieve really quickly from our UI. Oops, this is name input. Value. And then we want phone equals $W. Phone input dot value. Sweet. And now we should be able to send a text message with just a click of a button. Yeah, so when you sign up for a Twilio account, you have to sign up for a phone number that is associated to your Twilio account. So it's this is like the number that it's sending on behalf of it. Think of if you sign up for like any text updates, you get a text message from like a weird 5 or 6 digit number. That's essentially what you have to sign up for when you create a new Twilio account, and that'll send on behalf of you. It can't be your personal number. It has to be a number associated to that account. So it's kind of like Twilio's identifier saying like, this is you sending a message, or this is your account sending a message. And then the to number for a free account does have to be a verified phone number. If you have a premium Twilio account, you can send to other numbers as well. So in here, I'm going to go ahead and send my text message. Oops. I have a phone number set up here as well. So I'm going to go ahead and pass in that phone number. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit the pay button, which will send my text message for me as well. So if everything goes okay, we should be getting a text message. And so I'm going to be able to see that right here. So at 8:58 a.m., which is what time it is for me, I got a new text message from my Twilio account that says, thank you, Meredith, for backing our product. So we're able to get that username from the user entry, and then using the templating that we did in the backend, we can pass that value via the text message to create a really personal experience for the end user. All right. So let's see, quick questions. Some node module libraries will be getting updated. So Wix does not automatically upgrade. So Wix does not automatically upgrade the node module libraries because it may break your code. So we want you to go and validate that when you're upgrading to a new version of a node module, that it's going to go ahead and like make sure that nothing breaks with your functionality of your code. But it will let you know that there's new upgrades available, and it won't upgrade them until you actually ask for the latest version of the node module as well. Again, this is just so your code doesn't break without you realizing it, and you haven't tested for that new node module version that's available. Great. So I think with that, we're pretty much out of time. So there's just a couple of things I want to wrap up with. We do have a marketplace available from Wix. So if you are interested in exploring opportunities with developing for Corvid, you can check out our Wix marketplace. We also are releasing a Corvid Codemasters test soon, so you can be Corvid certified. So there's a lot of opportunity to actually do web development with Corvid. We have over 1 million users on Wix, and a lot of them aren't super technical. So using your JavaScript skills and what you've learned about Corvid, there's a lot of opportunity for business in the web development space in Wix. Additionally, we do have a contest that we're currently running. So if you think Corvid's really cool and you want to test your skills and build some cool projects, you can win up to $3,000 US by participating in our hackathon, where we're helping people to come together during this time where we can't physically be together. So check out our hackathon on DevPost. It's open until August 3rd. And again, you can win up to $3,000 US by building a really cool application for bringing people together. You can also find us on Reddit and Stack Overflow if you have any questions or you need help with anything or just want some more inspiration. So check out Reddit for cool projects that we're working on, and Stack Overflow if you have any questions or need any assistance. I'm regularly checking it and helping answer questions, as well as the community as a whole. So this is going to be helpful for people as we do more Corvid development. And lastly, you can also reach out to me personally either on LinkedIn or Twitter. So I'm just Meredith Hassett on LinkedIn and ML Hassett on Twitter. And so feel free to follow along if you have any questions or just want to see some cool stuff that I'm doing with Corvid, because I'm going to be posting some blogs that I write there as well. And with that, I just want to say thank you. I hope I answered your guys' questions as we went along, but if you have any additional questions, again, feel free to reach out to me. My name is Meredith Hassett, and you can find me on Twitter at ML Hassett.
You joining us today and sharing all that you have with Corvid by Wix. So, and all the technical detail, it was great. So. Thanks everyone for attending, and we will be posting this for rebroadcast and for sharing. So thanks again for joining us. Until next time.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.